Hello, you beautiful beings of light and fellow earth walkers with me. Thank you for stopping in today. And if you're a first-time watcher, welcome. If you're coming back for more, I appreciate that. Today is me reading my notes on my life and spirit calling to me and what that looked like to me from around the age of 36 or so to the present, and I'm in my 70s, so that's half of my life. Okay, this is chapter 2. What are you planning to do when there isn't any chaos in your life? The marriage counselor wanted to know. At the time, I just stared at her, not understanding the question or even reason for it. I certainly didn't have an answer with the meaning of chaos escaping me, since I didn't even know how it related to me. But the question settled on my mind where I would visit it often throughout my life. Conflict was such a constant and had been for years that it had become normal. At our next counseling session, she clarified further that I could think of conflict as opposing thoughts or actions or disagreement, in my situation without the possibility of resolution, which for me, she went on, escalated out of frustration and anger, compounding into a cycle of confusion, jumbled problems, and their emotions piling up on each other. Eventually, I had lost the ability to distinguish one problem or disagreement from the others, resulting in chaotic thought and actions. Therefore, chaos. That was when I began to understand that I wasn't equipped, not so far anyway, as a marital problem solver. This was frustrating me even further. Conflict, it seemed. Nothing had gone smoothly, or at least I couldn't recall many times of actual joy and pleasure in my early years, and now it was repeating in my marriage. An introvert and an extrovert do not necessarily make good companions, and we had not found a single activity, at least in many years, that brought us together in my marriage. One problem followed another, and struggle was all that I had known for as long as I could remember. Then something extraordinary happened. Sometime around spring 1984, a girlfriend suggested I see a psychic she knew. Not exactly afraid of psychics, but I'd always gone with my mother before and was younger. I had to think long and hard about her suggestion. It took a few months for things to become so stressful that I was becoming sick and tired, that I finally worked up the nerve to schedule a visit to the seer that she recommended. The rest of that is in chapter 1. I will set a marker for you so you can go back if you haven't seen that chapter, and I'll move on from here. After seeing the psychic reader intuitive, 2 more years passed, even after seeing Stephen, and through continued counseling before conclusions and decisions would be made. Even though steadily improving at communicating with an engineer and non-family oriented mind, it did not resolve the underlying problems of our marriage, and I was still having trouble making the move towards divorce. Thinking that there had to be something I had tried, efforts to get him to join me at counseling were repeatedly followed by adamant refusals. He remained rigid in his stance that it was unnecessary, even after telling him that I was having trouble continuing the marriage. The comprehension or interest that I now realize was not there, just wasn't there for him. Our son came into the sessions once the futility of pursuing his dad's attendance set in. In a hopeful last-ditch effort, secretly, I thought that our son might be able to have an effect on persuading him to come to the sessions, which ultimately he could not. Finally, I recalled there being a lack of room for me in there. Without the possibility of solutions or resolutions, I made the decision that waiting for progress after 9 years where there had been none, not even an inch, to be an exercise in futility. It was time for me to move forward. Slowly but steadily, I started coming to terms with divorce and began releasing limited beliefs and desires around that in order to adopt a new understanding, that of what it was going to be operating from within personal power instead of helplessness. The counselor had helped me to understand that. Slowly, a path was rising before me, light shining on it, showing that there was a path. I was aware that it was born out of knowledge that none of this was our fault. Not his, not mine. None of it was our fault. Each of us had tried our best. I chose to personally serve him with the divorce papers when that time came, hoping to ease the blow. Pushed to the edge by the documents, it was the day he agreed to go to counseling. A full 2 years since I had made the suggestion and had been repeating it. Long over the sadness and self-blame for the failure of our marriage, I let out a deep sigh and then told him that I was sorry, but that window had closed for us as a couple, and that I thought it a good idea that he go for himself and our son. Amazing, I thought, while placing the phone back into its cradle following the attorney's call. By this time, I had obtained an attorney who seemed understanding and compassionate. He was drafting the papers based on the laws of the state and my desires for an amicable dissolution. Amazed at the presence of deep sadness at the loss of finality of divorce having come to terms prior to the call, there was peace in the need for it. Not just for me, but I hoped eventually for him too. Amazing that I didn't feel something more during the 2 years since the decision had been made to move forward with a divorce. I had been able to objectively watch myself. I realized that during that 2 years and having to deal with things, but stepping by stepping into the knowledge that it was up to me, it was for a better aspect of my being, really life-saving measures, I feel. During the 2 years since the decision had been made, I had been able to more objectively watch myself. Watching self brought me to an acute awareness of the thoughts and feelings I'd harbored toward someone I had loved, would always love, but with whom cohabiting wasn't serving deeper needs. He was now facing a difficult transition of his own, and I wouldn't be there to help. I had unwittingly been destroying us both by holding on to my conditioned beliefs, ingrained having grown up with them. Beliefs that no longer served a useful, productive purpose. Quite simply cut from incompatible cloth in which I was unable to adapt or cope. I wanted more. Having mentally moved on and transitioned emotionally, the gap for me was too great to bridge. I lacked the strength or will to try anything more. All I had left was compassion and a place I tucked away for remembered love for him. Finalized in 1988, there never was a celebration following the divorce. I didn't think celebrating a divorce that was inharmonious and destructive to both parties in some ways. I didn't think celebrating that union to be appropriate. Instead, I chose to bless and hoped to uplift him with prayers, keeping our marital conclusion tucked away unless asked. Most of the inner and outer relationship conflict had abated significantly, but left me without a compass, leaving me numb and without satisfaction I thought divorce would bring. My life had been structured around wanting marriage and a family, and I'd made a mess of that. Choosing not to date until my son graduated from high school, my plate already full with activities and work, and not wanting to subject him to one more thing, I was lonely. Trying not to think about that, I put my attention toward personal growth. Learning all that I could from spiritual books and occasional classes, and going to church with concerted effort directed at distinguishing between my inner self and the egoic voice I was accustomed to hearing. A shift from chaos to peace was underway. From 1988 to about January 1990, adjustments continued, especially those that maintained stability, balance, and harmony for my son and for our child. Surprised by how little effort it took to appreciate what my now ex had been through, help appeared with the exact right timing when an old friend popped in to see me. This happened especially when veering off track. That's when inner compass reminded me to stay the course by bringing up the dream of mutilation I'd had just before her visit, remembered just before her visit. That's what I considered to be an instantaneous course correction away from dangerous territory. In our life together, my ex-husband had suffered greatly, and all I wanted was for the suffering to end for everyone. It would take diligent efforts for me to achieve that. As a reminder to myself, I was the one who had opened the door, inviting him to come in the first place. Challenged as I was, invaluable gifts of self-growth and self-awareness came out of our time together. Not a believer in blame, however. If there was anyone responsible, it was I. In time, an increasingly unquenchable thirst to know more, found me burying myself in studies of every esoteric curiosity which came into my awareness. It wasn't until September of '89 that reality called on me again. At work that morning, that good friend, a previous co-worker, came toward me, arms extended, to provide a bear hug. Once her grip loosened, Susie asked how I was doing. The standard fine came out but from a deeper place within, I knew the response to be false. Waiting with compassion and knowing the truth, she continued slowly, deliberately saying, "It can't be easy for you. And I've not seen you cry once." That was all it took to smash the brittle confines of the wall I thought had been built much sturdier as it crumbled into fragments. In that instant, her arrow of truth had struck its mark, dead center on the target, allowing my own pain and suffering encapsulated in tears to flow freely. She grabbed me, holding on to my limp and sobbing body. When the heaves subsided, I looked at her saying, "It's like all my dreams have been flushed down the toilet. Just so much crap to be disposed of in that way." There it was, out in the open. Compounded years of thoughts and feelings, helpless, worthless, and not good enough or smart enough, added to the believed failure of marriage. The pain, too great to deal with, left no place to go but deep inside. Along with whatever else lay hidden there, the next thing was added into the jumbled, massive heap of pain and chaos. If you can't see it, you can't feel it. Therefore, you don't have to deal with it, right? Or so I thought. On the fringes of the lesson, that eventually getting to the understanding that just because it's buried does not mean it's dead. In fact, it's just hiding, sneaking out under the right circumstances in unconscious ways. It took a month more of processing my friend's comment until one night the realization came that what I was missing was a dream. I needed a new dream. With that thought in mind, but the feelings of pain and grief absent, still unresolved as well, bed welcomed my weary body. In conversational prayers before sleep, I told my guardian angel and God, whoever was up there listening, that I needed a new dream and asked for their help. Prefaced with, "You know better than I what would be in my best interest." Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next video, which will be comments about chapter 2, and hopefully that will be tomorrow. And thank you for watching. I look forward to the next installment, and it would be wonderful for me to hear your comments, any questions you may have. I'm thinking about doing some open sessions, but I'd like to know whether that's something you might be interested in and what your timing might be for that. So on that note, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and that's what helps me to get this information out, which I'm hoping, that's my desire, and the intention of this is that it's stirring up some of your own inner thoughts and feelings about your life and where you may have made some changes. Thank you for watching. You want to know more about me, my website and Facebook pages are listed below. I will see you the next time. I love you all this much. Thank you for sharing this earth walk with me.